Welcome to the deep dive session on Sri Lanka's intellectual property framework, featuring eminent lawyers and IP experts. The session will be moderated by Mr. Shanaka Kure. Shanaka, over to you.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our session today on Sri Lanka's intellectual property right framework. We are extremely fortunate to have a very distinguished panel with us today, comprising of Dr. Harsha Cabral, President's Counsel, who has a leading practice in the sphere of intellectual property rights law, Mr. Dinar Phillips, President's Counsel, who is a specialist in commercial law with a special interest in intellectual property. We are also fortunate to have Mrs. Geethanjali Ranawaka with us, the Director General of the National Intellectual Property Office of Sri Lanka. And we have Mr. Revan Veerasinghe, Attorney at Law, who is also the legal consultant to the Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Cabral to give us a brief overview of the intellectual property rights regime in Sri Lanka. Dr. Cabral.
Thank you, Shanaka. The overall aspect of intellectual property in Sri Lanka, the regime of intellectual property, comes under one particular statute. It's a very, very important statute, which is called the Intellectual Property Act number 36 of 2003. Now, a law that in regard to intellectual property is basically how you get it, how you keep it, and how you protect it. Those are the three key features in any law. Now, I would say that this law is a very modern piece of legislation. And if I may give a little background to this, as you know, we were under the British for a while, and even after the Britishers left, we followed the English law in most of the commercial matters. So intellectual property was no exception. So we had the English law, and we had Merchandise Marks Ordinance, Designs Act, then the Trademarks Ordinance, Copyright Act 1911. So all these were in different silos. And when we started the open economy in the 1970s, we realized that we should bring all these under one law, one mechanism. So there was a codification done, and we were helped by the WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organization, to do this. And we took over the WIPO's model law for developing countries. And we were very fortunate because in Geneva at that time, and in WIPO was our own Mr. Lakshman Kadrigama, who was helpful in helping us to start our own law. And the Code of Intellectual Property of 1979, 52 of 1979 was a codification. And it was there for almost 25 years. And then by that time, the World Trade Organization, the WTO, had come up with the TRIPS agreement, Trade-Related Intellectual Property Rights Agreement, to have a uniform system of intellectual property management all over the world. And all the member states had to comply with it. And we also got a few extensions, like in India. And in 2003, we came up with this new law, the Intellectual Property Act number 36 of 2003. Now, I say this is a very modern law, and there are no major amendments up to now, because this speaks for itself the importance of intellectual property. Now, it's a tiny piece of legislation when you look at certain other statutes. It has only 213 sections, but it covers the entirety of intellectual property. It covers copyright law from sections 5 to 27. It covers industrial designs law from sections 28 to 61. Then it covers the law of patents from section 62 to 100. Then the law of trademarks, trademarks, device marks, merchandise marks, and the entire gamut of trademark protection from 101 to 145. Then the integrated circuits from 146 to 159. And another important area called unfair competition in section 160. That deals with the earlier regime of passing off. Now we talk of unfair competition, and it takes another important area of undisclosed information, which is known as trade secrets and so on and so forth. It's a very, very wide area. on unfair competition and undisclosed information. Besides, it has the civil remedy mechanisms under 170, where you can go to a court and get your injunctions, damages, continuing injunctions, then and orders, so on and so forth. Then in 177 to 203, you have the criminal remedies, offences and penalties, where you can go to a magistrate courts and get your criminal remedies. And then sections 206 and 207 covers with border control. Powers are given to the Customs, Director General of Customs with regard to counterfeits coming in or going out and so on and so forth. In addition, there are very important sections in 161 where they talk about geographical indications like Ceylon tea, Sri Lanka tea, Ceylon cinnamon. So when you look at the statute, this, though it's 213 section, it covers all aspects of intellectual property from the word go, and every mechanism. In addition to that, it has the administration. We have with us the Director General, National Intellectual Property Office, who will speak. You can get it from her, how exactly it operates. So this particular intellectual property regime is administered by the National Intellectual Property Office, and the Director General herself controls all the mechanisms with regard to registrations, transfers, assignments, all the records that have to be maintained, whether it's patents, designs, trademarks, or whatever. So when you look at this particular piece of legislation, I would say it is a wholesome piece of legislation, and it's one of the success stories in our jurisprudence. Now, the court that is assigned for civil remedies is the Commercial High Court of the Western Province. It has all island jurisdiction, and all cases, all infringement cases or whatever cases that are coming under the Intellectual Property Act, all island jurisdiction goes to this court. And this court, mind you, we have now 3 courts established, and we have competent judges. And the advantage is from there you have just one appeal to the Supreme Court, one stop. Unlike in the earlier days, you have to wait for years and years for appeals. But here it's the shortcut from the Commercial High Court to the Supreme Court. So much so that because of the high quality judgments that are delivered in the Commercial High Court, the appeals are also minimal. So for anyone who is interested in protecting their intellectual property rights in Sri Lanka, I believe this is the place, because the mechanism with now, for example, civil cases, we have about average of 75 to 100 cases every year. Most of the cases are though on trademarks and unfair competition area, but you would see all the new mechanisms are seen in this particular piece of legislation. Though it's a tiny piece of legislation, I can say anyone interested in registering a trademark in Sri Lanka or protecting it or to keep it alive, all that mechanisms are provided for in this tiny piece of legislation. Whether it's copyright law, whether it's design law, whether it's patent law, integrated circuits, or any related matter, you have criminal remedies, civil remedies, all available and within the fingertips of the rights holder. Whether we as lawyers, whether we appear for the rights holder or on the other side, the person who has been accused of using somebody else's mark, we find it very important to say that this area of the law is one of the hallmark of the quality jurisprudence of this country. So I must say, in a synopsis, if I might say, that the intellectual property regime in Sri Lanka and the Intellectual Property Act in Sri Lanka, the Act number 36 of 2003, and the administration and the function and the litigation part of intellectual property in Sri Lanka is a plus point in our region, when you say. Even the WIPO knows it. All the international players who come and register their trademarks in Sri Lanka know it. And from my colleagues, you might be able to learn more about the different areas we are planning to discuss today. Over to you, Shanaka.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cabral. That was extremely insightful. And there you have it, a nutshell of the rights available if you were to come in as an investor into Sri Lanka. Now, Dr. Cabral very helpfully laid out the entire rights regime. But as you would all know, while rights are important, they're only as important as the enforcement of those rights when something goes wrong or when there is a dispute. Dr. Cabral mentioned briefly about the commercial courts that look into these areas, which are specialized courts. But to tell us in a little bit more detail about the rights you would have as an investor when it comes to enforcing your intellectual property in Sri Lanka, may I hand you over to Mr. Dinal Phillips. Mr. Phillips, sir.
Thank you, Janaka. I have only a limited time of 10 minutes, so let me gallop through my presentation as fast as possible. Yes, the jurisdiction of our courts is vested in Colombo. So wherever a dispute arises in Sri Lanka, the dispute is heard fairly and squarely in our dedicated commercial high courts, where 3 specially trained judges hear them. All IP matters are there, as I said, except criminal matters. And an appeal goes directly to the Supreme Court without spending time in the Court of Appeal. A very, very new development is taking place, which I've heard from very, very reliable sources, is that it's our courts shortly after this lockdown is over is going to be extremely tech savvy, where you will have contemporaneous proceedings taking place, where voice to data takes place. Then also video conferencing facilities. So even if you're overseas, you need not travel down to Sri Lanka. With the video conferencing facility available, that takes place. Then a pilot project has been commenced where case management will play a very important role, where day-to-day trials will commence without continuances being granted. And judges have been trained on it, and they're ready to, shall we say, rock and roll no sooner the curfew, etc. is lifted. And finally, there's also to be introduced shortly a special investors court, which is probably very high value disputes will be heard there. Again, another specialized judge will sit in there. So it's been well thought of in that way. On now to the Act itself, it is TRIPS compatible, as Harsha said, and it has extraterritorial effect, i.e., even if the impugned mark is overseas, if it commences from Sri Lanka, the Act has jurisdiction to hear it. It's a departure from the old Act earlier view that there was no extraterritorial jurisdiction. Then once you are a registered proprietor, you have certain statutory rights, inalienable rights, the acts of infringement, and you could preclude third parties from using it. Then you can conduct assignments, conduct licensing, and parallel imports are permitted. Then also we have the cross-border prohibitions, where if you have a registered mark, you make a complaint to the Directorate of Customs, who can detain the counterfeits. It applies only for counterfeits at the airport, at the port itself. Then, as I said, if you are a registered proprietor, criminal sanctions are available. So if you are a registered proprietor, those are those rights. Then, even if you are not registered, we recognize famous marks registered around the world. And if by chance you have forgotten or been unable to oppose the registration of a particular mark, you can bring an action for nullity of registration, that it should have been actually precluded from the start itself. Also, there are others who register marks and have a dog in the manger attitude, and they try to bargain to transfer the mark. So you can even have the mark expunged if they have not used it for a period of 5 years. I now get on to the piece de rescensions of our Act, which is the concept of unfair competition. It's a WIPO concept developed by our jurisprudence. It first came into effect in 1979, and it's gone further and further. It's a much wider concept of passing off, but it nevertheless, passing of laws are still of persuasive value here. It deals with unregistered marks and get-ups, celebrities, and such like are protected under the mark. Then disparaging advertised is frowned upon. Misleading advertising also is frowned upon. Then the most important parts are undisclosed commercial information and commercial espionage. also can be brought under the umbrella of unfair competition. And finally, geographical indications also come under this umbrella of unfair competition, like pure Ceylon tea, Scotch whiskey. And now I'm told under the new amendment that is proposed to come in, Ceylon cinnamon is also becoming appellation of origin. So it's a great boon here with the unfair competition. Lot of areas are covered. And finally, I get on to the area of remedies, where the usual injunctions take place. The Anton Pillar order has given statutory effect so that you can seize the impugned goods where the demonstrable risk of the goods being destroyed, and later they could be put into the channels of commerce by expunging the marks. And also statutory damages available instead of proven damages. So you could elect without wasting time to compel the court. You get your injunction, you get proven damages as well. Those are all available under the Act. So it cuts short time again. And finally, there's also the defensive mechanism of declaration of non-infringement, where you feel that some rival company is trying to stop your trade going on by bringing a restraining order. You could go to court first and stall perhaps the evil day of saying that your mark is different to the other party's mark. That's a declaration of non-infringement, which is a very useful concept that is there, especially in our law. So I think I've done my time here. So back to you, Shanaka.
Thank you very much, Mr. Phillips. That was very useful, and you got an entire overview of the types of remedies that you are able to obtain, both in the civil jurisdiction and in the criminal jurisdiction. As mentioned by panelists so far, the National Intellectual Property Office plays a key role in the implementation of the rights that are guaranteed to you under the law in Sri Lanka. And in fact, we're very, very fortunate to have the Director General herself with us today, Ms. Geethanjali Ranawaka. So may I now invite her to speak to us a little bit about the role the NIPO plays, as well as any new innovative ideas that they have to move forward and expedite the process involving obtaining registrations with regard to intellectual property rights. Mrs. Ranawaka.
Thank you, Mr. Anaka. Good afternoon. Yes, I can see that Dr. Harsh Kabral has given an overview about the Act and the implementation, the sections and all that briefly. So let me go a little bit about the administration and control of intellectual property rights in Sri Lanka. And the Intellectual Property Office is the only government department functioning under the Ministry of Trade. And as Dr. Harsha said, its statutory responsibilities are assigned by the IP Act number 36 of 2003. And as in most other jurisdictions, the functions of IP Office, we basically register and provide control and management of the trademarks, patents, and industrial designs which are registered with us. And as for copyright, it does not need any formality, and it gets protection automatically by operation of law, because the applicants don't need to file an application with the IP Office, unlike for trademarks, patents, and designs. And only area that I need to highlight here in regard to copyright is, even though there is no registration system, there are provisions to seek enforcement in the first instance with us. That is by way of a dispute resolution mechanism, where a complainant can come to the office without a fee. We don't charge any fee. A complaint can be lodged and observation can be called from the other respondent party, and we conduct a brief inquiry, and all these aspects are given in our regulation, the methods of doing the dispute resolution mechanism in the office. So that has been a successful task that we have started very recently. Most of the applications, complaints are coming in during the past 3 to 4 years, and we have been able to settle also copyright disputes. Thereafter, if the parties are not happy, either party can go to courts, as I mentioned earlier, to civil courts and get it, operative. In the case of the IP office, we have been doing a lot of work in trademark registration. Basically, the most prominent part is the trademarks, and also generating income is trademarks, and thereafter patents and designs also follow. So that is where we get the IP income to the country, both by local applications and also by international applications. So that facilitation is there by way of filing through an agent, IP agent, the international application. And local applicants can file on their own an application with us, and we will be looking into the acceptability of the mark, acceptability of the patent, acceptability of the designs according to the provisions of the Act. So these are the basic functions that we do right now. As mentioned earlier, we are registering in regard to geographical indications, certification marks. So right now we have Ceylon tea, Ceylon cinnamon, and also a few international marks also under certification mark system. So this is where we have been doing according to the available provisions in the Act. And during the recent past, like 3 to 4 years, there have been many requests by the stakeholder groups in regard to the agriculture, exports and all that, that to amend, bring in a few amendments to the Act so that a facilitation can be given to register geographical indication per se, not as a certification mark, but also by way of a proper geographical indication certificate which can be shown to the world over, and also have a comfort zone when they are penetrating into the international markets, that these particular geographical indications are purely originating from Sri Lanka. So that amendment is on the way, partly done, and it's in the near future. It's coming out. The legal drafting has been done, and the final touches have to be done only now. Currently being done, and it will be submitted to the cabinet for approval and also in the parliament for approval, and we hope to do it very soon so that the facilitation will benefit local GI holders and also the international GI holders, so which can come in and register their GIs directly without going into the certification mark route, unlike earlier. So and also I need to mention in regard to trademarks, we are striding forward in regard to Madrid Protocol accession very soon, hopefully towards the early part of next year. Even that amendment has been done, proposed, and being approved by the legal draftman, which will see a finality hopefully towards this year, and we will start working on the Madrid accession route hopefully early next year. Because once you access the Madrid Protocol after the legislation is in place, amendment in place, we have to submit the documents, ratifying documents to WIPO and place our accession by the government of Sri Lanka. And thereafter, after 3 months only, we will be able to accept accept international or local applications as regards Madrid road, which will facilitate filing of international applications. And one more point that I need to say in regard to copyright, we have been able to access the Marrakesh Treaty, which is facilitating access to printed material by visually impaired people and also the print disabled, and that's an exception to the copyright rules. That was approved by Parliament this year, 2021 January, and now it is in place, and we are drafting the regulations for that. So accordingly, so these 3 areas we have done a lot of work during the year. We will be able to see a finality, and actually it's a facilitation for everyone, international, both international and local, to have proper quick registration by way of Madrid route, and also steady registration by way of geographical indication. So these are the points that I wanted to highlight. And also one more thing, we wish to add that we are planning to working out a plan to upgrade our systems and make available the online filing system for everyone from wherever they are, so that they can, if they wish to see their own trademarks, their similar marks, they can access the databases, our databases and the global databases, and see the comparison and file an application. So that facilitation also we are trying to provide with the support of the ICTA here in Sri Lanka, and also the World Intellectual Property Organization, which is they are willing to have a MOU signed between the parties and go ahead, and that part also currently we are working on. Another little point I need to say, despite the current situation here in the world over and also in Sri Lanka, we have been able to earn our IP income during the year, that is up to end of May, around 53 million rupees. Despite this COVID situation, despite the fact that they cannot enter our office to file them personally, they can file, there's a system to file online and pay online. So that facilitation is there, and we have received 3,816 trademarks during the year up to May, from January to May, 240 patent applications, including that of PCT, and also 56 industrial designs. So we are happy to announce, though it's a bit of a restricted environment situation, we have been able to achieve these targets during the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ranawaka. That was an extremely insightful presentation. I'm sure investors the world over will be very happy to hear that we are now getting access to the Madrid Protocol, by which you are able to register a mark in any country overseas, and for it to be tendered into Sri Lanka, and vice versa, where local investors could register overseas. Another very interesting and exciting development is the fact that you are going online, and you have been able to, through these challenging times, to be able to process applications online. The fact that we will also have a fully searchable online website-based approach would no doubt also interest investors, because that there's a way with the need to actually travel to Sri Lanka. So with these technological advances, I'm certain that the landscape will look brighter and brighter, even though we are in troubled times for the moment. So with that being said, let me now hand you over to Mr. Revan Weerasinghe. Revan, I recall recently when we had a chat about this, you told me that you genuinely feel that Sri Lanka is a location and a venue that can offer something special, that it's a very special place, and it has a lot of potential when it comes to an investor who is interested in innovation. Could you explain to our investors as to why you feel that way?
Thanks, Shanaka. Yes, actually, I do believe that we are, as a country, in the cusp of something big, right? I think all the right factors, advertently or inadvertently, have lined up to create greater innovation and maybe an innovation breakthrough in our country than what we have seen ever before. I'll just line up those factors in the course of my presentation. And I think this is the result of something that we have built, not just over the last 10 years, but over the last 30 years, I would say, especially in relation to human capital. What I mean by that is, Sri Lanka has built strategically 2 or 3 key areas of excellence. Okay, I'd like to focus on this now. Whilst there are many other areas of excellence that we have built, like say in agriculture or in other areas, export-related areas, I'd like to just focus today on IT, apparel, which spans those industries have shown excellence for over a period of 20, 30 years, and of late, nanotechnology. So I'll just focus on those three areas. So I think we have been we have reached par excellence in terms of being service providers in those two areas. Now, if you take IT and apparel, I think Sri Lanka has now come to a situation where we play at the cutting edge. We provide services at the cutting edge. So as a result of that, Shanaka, I think what we have done is we have created capacity. Knowingly or unwittingly, we have created a lot of capacity in terms of IT experts and even experts in the apparel technology space, right? And this, like I said, has been going on for 10, 20, 30 years. Now, if you talk about the IT, now, as a result of this excellence that we've created, we are now giving rise to that know-how being already in the country amongst that service industry. So it's just a matter of time that those people will step out from a service-related industry to pure innovation. And the moment that happens, the moment our workforce, our human capital starts innovating, and I think that's a no-brainer, Shanaka, because if you look at the trajectory of the world itself, startups are taking a much more significant role than ever before, right? So my argument is we already have the human capital in place in terms of IT, apparel, and nanotechnology. Now, if you look at those key industries, apparel, it started in 1985. So that's about 30 plus years. It has 5.2 billion export revenue. 44% of the country's exports come from apparel. The sector employs about 15% of the country's workforce. And we cater to the better or the best corporates in the USA, UK, Italy, Germany, Canada, France, Netherlands. I'm talking about the Nikes, the Lululemons, the Gaps of the world. And those companies are playing at the cutting edge of technology, right? And you know, we have key companies with strengths in that area like Mars, Brandix, InQ, Hydromanis. So that there is human wealth there is human capital there. Similarly, in IT, if you look at the stats, we have about 300 plus IT / business processing companies in the country. We have a workforce of about 85,000 people, heavily skilled, and it is nearly a 1 billion export contribution. So I think it's a no-brainer that we are on the cusp of something greater because we already have built that human capital. And if you look at our IT players, they too, just like the apparel industry, cater to the world's giants, the giants of the world. I mean, if you're looking at, going back to apparel, if you look at apparel, Nike is one of the greatest innovators in the textile space. But Sri Lanka has so much dealings with Nike that our labor force itself is to a greater extent equipped with that know-how. So if you put that aside, then it's only a matter of time that many startups, spin-off companies will take place in the country if the right environment is put together by the government. Now, just like IT and apparel, you also get nanotechnology. Now, nanotechnology has been something that has come maybe over the last 14, 15 years. Now, I have been managing legal at Slintech for the last 14 years, 13 plus. And I have seen the expansion of this industry, right? So nanotechnology arrived in Sri Lanka through Slintech. I mean, that was the pioneer in nanotechnology, which is a public-private partnership between the government of Sri Lanka and 8 private equity shareholders, namely MAS, Brandix, Hades, Dialog, Blumchem, Camso Lodestar, LOLC, and Browns. They mean to set up a science park whereby anyone can come and plug and play and do innovation within Sri Lanka. it's really a plug and play operation, right? So you have the initial hub, which is the center of excellence, and anyone can come and do projects with Slintech. So it actually has created this ecosystem. It actually has created this ecosystem of excellence, right? So similarly, if you look at IT, apparel, nanotechnology, you suddenly find an environment where you have requisite labor, human capital for greater innovation than what we've seen over the last 40, 50 years, right? And these guys are very skilled. Now, if you look at the direction of, like I said, where the world is going, startups are brewing everywhere. So now we have the human capital. We have this amazing destination that's Sri Lanka, where people can do business at ease. You know, there isn't this copying culture. We have a strong legal system, right, where IP law is very strong in Sri Lanka. I think we have a dedicated court, almost dedicated court for that purpose, which is the Commercial High Court. And all the Learned President's Council will prove to you how effective that court has been in delivering judgments, orders pretty fast. So you have that ecosystem, and I think for IP to really work, it's not just a sword but it's also a shield. You also have the protective mechanism. Now Sri Lanka has entered into so many international covenants by which we have the ability, maybe through the Patent Cooperation Treaty, to take our patents internationally very fast. So Sri Lanka is equipped for innovation and greater innovation. So the point I'd like to make is the fact that we are at the cutting edge because we have the human capital that can do it. We have science parks like Slintech, which has proved itself in coming out with cutting edge technology. Now Slintech came up with an invention which is really cutting edge to convert graphite into graphene. It's its own Sri Lankan process. Now graphene is something which is used in most cutting edge technologies like batteries, state-of-the-art batteries, right? And it's used, it has so many applications. So in that backdrop, when we have that equipment, I foresee in the next 3-4 years that you're going to find ignition in terms of an eco space for innovation. But you need a few key elements put in place, which I think the government is working on. One is a channel for funding, right? A pipeline for funding, and which I advocate to the people who are listening in that Sri Lanka is perfect, because at the moment we have unsaturated an unsaturated arena for investors. There aren't so many investors playing this water, but the trajectory is such that very soon you're going to have groundbreaking innovations coming out. And I won't be surprised, given the depths of our IT knowledge, that we are going to find a few unicorns coming out of Sri Lanka, especially in the IT space. So I think it's a no-brainer for people to actually invest in Sri Lanka, come and see what's happening and really get involved. So, so just to recap, I think we have the human capital. We have that in abundance. We have the laws that protect us, right? Namely the IP Act, which protects employers' rights. It protects know-how. Section 160, subsection 6, which deals with undisclosed information, protects people from commercial espionage. So it's a very powerful section. So I think we have everything in place with just a few, a bit of support from the government and a bit of support from the private sector in leading, you know, the startup ecosystem. I think we are going to see a lot of breakthrough innovations coming out of Sri Lanka in the next 5 to 10 years. I may be running out of time, Shanaka, so I'll hand it back.
Thank you, Revan. Yes, we do have a hard stop in a few minutes. I have got a few questions curated which have come in, but I don't think we have much time except for one question. And if I may address it to Dr. Cabral. Dr. Cabral, if you could please let us know, there is a question as to if you are an investor who has not had the time or opportunity to register his trademark and does not have a registration here, as to what his rights would be. I believe unfair competition was discussed, but also the well-known mark. In a couple of minutes, if you could tell us the investor who has not had the opportunity to register here, what his rights would be, what protection he would have in Sri Lanka for a brand that hasn't come yet, sir.
Yeah,
Thank
we have the protection under unfair competition. That is to say, if you can establish a prior user, if there is another person using it in Sri Lanka, you will have to first negotiate with that person to assign it, unless you prove that he knew about this and that he has been basically fraudulently copying it. So if you can establish, it's a matter of evidence to show that prior user, and in this particular class, because there are several international classifications. So it's a matter of evidence to show, but when the undisclosed information, the unfair competition regime provides even an unregistered mark to state your case here and to seek remedy.
Thank you, Dr. Gabra. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the close of today's session. I want to thank formally all our distinguished panelists for joining us today amidst difficult situations and circumstances. And I want to thank all of you viewing and every potential investor out there. It's a difficult time, but the organizers have informed me that they've taken a lot of time and effort to produce this forum so that as an investor out there, you are able to sample what Sri Lanka has to offer. And on behalf of the organizers, we do invite you to come and take a chance on Sri Lanka. That being said, I would like to close the session by thanking our panelists one last time and also wishing everybody all the very best and hoping that everyone out there, including our distinguished panelists and the team behind this forum, I hope and wish and pray that everybody stays safe. All the very best, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Shanaka.